Out of the morning mist, a hulking figure emerges, silent, deliberate, and ancient. With a mane like a lion and a body like a tank, the bison looks less like livestock and more like something carved from the land itself. Towering at nearly 6 feet at the shoulder and weighing well over 1,000 kilograms, it stands as a living monument to the raw, untamed heart of North America. But this isn't just a relic of a wild past. Today, this beast walks a fine line between heritage and high-end cuisine, from sacred symbol to smoked delicacy. The journey of the American bison is unlike anything you might expect. For centuries, bison ruled the plains in numbers that stretched beyond imagination, 30 to 60 million strong. Yet by the late 1800s, barely a few hundred remained, hunted nearly to extinction in what some historians now describe as an ecological massacre. The animal that once fed nations and moved with the seasons like a wave across the grasslands was reduced to a ghost species. But against all odds, the bison didn't vanish. It adapted. It survived. And now, in a surprising twist of fate, it's found a new home. Not just in conservation sanctuaries, but on farms, ranches, and in kitchens. The idea might seem strange at first, farming bison, turning them into smoked gourmet meat. After all, these aren't docile cattle. They're unpredictable, powerful, and incredibly wild at heart. Yet that's exactly what makes them so fascinating, and what makes their transformation into a controlled culinary product all the more remarkable. But how does one even begin to tame a creature like this without robbing it of its essence? And how do we go from vast windswept plains to shrink-wrapped perfection on supermarket shelves and luxury restaurant plates? Join FactoryX as we uncover the untold story of how one of North America's most formidable animals is raised, managed, processed, and smoked to perfection. A tale that blends ancient instincts, modern science, and an age-old culinary tradition that honors the whole animal. You're about to witness something much more than just meat production. You're about to step into a world where wild meets discipline and survival turns into legacy. Let's begin. If you were to imagine a bison farm, wipe away the images of tight pens, metal gates, and crowded feedlots. Bison don't do confinement. These animals are descendants of the wild, and even after generations in human care, their instincts haven't dulled. Try to fence them in like cattle, and you'll end up with broken gates, or worse. Bison farming, therefore, isn't just a job. It's a philosophy. It's about adapting human practices to suit nature's rhythms, not the other way around. The majority of bison in North America are raised on sprawling highland pastures, tens, sometimes hundreds of hectares in size. These aren't farms in the conventional sense. They're controlled wildlands. Here, bison are free to roam, graze, and interact with the environment as they would in the wild. No barns, no artificial lighting, just open skies, rolling grass, and the slow dance of the seasons. Unlike cattle, which require close supervision and supplemental feeding, bison are self-sufficient. Their diet is almost entirely forage-based natural grasses, wild stems, and roots. Many operations use rotational grazing methods to mimic the migration patterns of ancient herds. Fences are moved, pastures are rested. The land recovers, the herd moves on, and the cycle continues. It's a system rooted in sustainability and balance, a word rarely used in industrial livestock production. But just because bison roam freely doesn't mean farming them is simple. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because you can't force bison into submission. Everything, from herding to health checks, must be done with strategic minimalism. Farmers learn to observe, not dominate. They study movement patterns, mood changes, and even subtle vocalizations to anticipate how the herd might react. There's no loud yelling, no whips, no aggressive prodding. Instead, farmers often work in silence or use calm cues and trained herding dogs to guide the animals. Timing is everything. Push too hard, and the herd could panic, leading to injuries, property damage, or worse. Maintain too much distance, and the animals might scatter, becoming impossible to manage. It's a delicate balance, like working with a sentient, powerful tide that has to be nudged, never forced. To support these conditions, bison farmers invest heavily in land, often remote, high-altitude or prairie terrain where grasses grow wild and pesticide-free. The terrain isn't easy, but it's perfect for the animal. These environments keep the bison healthy and their meat clean, free from antibiotics or artificial enhancers. Some farms even go a step further, refusing to feed any grain or processed supplements at all, branding their products as 100% grass-fed, heritage-raised. Interestingly, these practices aren't just about ethics or branding. They're practical. Stress affects bison differently than it does other animals. A stressed bison not only becomes harder to handle, but can also experience a physiological response that degrades meat quality. Elevated cortisol levels can lead to dark, dry, and tough cuts, ruining the final product. So when bison are raised calmly and naturally, it's not just good for the animal. It directly enhances the meat. Then there's the economics. Bison take longer to reach market weight. They reproduce slowly. They require more space. All of this makes them more expensive to raise, and thus more exclusive. The high cost, however, comes with a silver lining. Because bison aren't raised in massive, overcrowded operations, the risk of disease outbreaks is dramatically reduced. There's less need for antibiotics, less environmental strain, and far better traceability. And this new form of farming isn't just happening on boutique ranches or organic co-ops. Across North America, a quiet revolution is unfolding. Former cattle ranchers are converting their herds. Conservationists are leasing land to bison cooperatives. Even chefs are buying direct from farms to feature bison meat in upscale restaurants. What was once a fringe movement is rapidly becoming a model for the future, one that respects the past. Still, even the most carefully raised bison must eventually make the transition from pasture to product. And that's where things get even more interesting and more intense. Because managing bison in the field is one thing, but guiding them into a corral, preparing them for transport, and processing their massive bodies with precision, that's where the quiet wild turns into controlled chaos. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the plains, a subtle tension ripples through the grass. The wind slows. The bison, scattered across vast open pastures, continue to graze, seemingly unaware. But the herder knows this is the moment. It's time to bring them in. Unlike cattle, which can be herded with relative ease, bison require a very different approach. You don't drive them, you guide them. You don't bark orders, you whisper cues. The process begins slowly, almost invisibly. A figure on horseback appears on the distant ridge. At their side, herding dogs, specially trained for this singular purpose, wait silently for instruction. There's no room for error here. Bison are massive and fast. One wrong move and a 1,000-kilogram bull could charge, not out of aggression, but out of confusion. The entire herd could spook, scattering across hundreds of hectares. So every motion the herder makes is calculated. Subtle hand gestures, shifts in posture, the angle of approach, all designed to signal, not startle. With a raised signal flag or a gentle click of the tongue, the dogs fan out like silent shadows. They don't bark. They don't nip. Instead, they move with fluid discipline, pressing just enough pressure on the flanks of the herd to coax a shift in direction. One bison begins to move, then another. The group starts to stir. And suddenly, as if controlled by a single mind, the herd flows like water, not rushed but steady toward the corral. This is the part most people never see, the dance between humans, animals, and ancient instinct. There are no fences pushing them in, only trust, space, and rhythm. And while it might seem peaceful, there's a quiet intensity underlying every moment. The herder must constantly read the mood of the animals. A flick of an ear, a raised tail, a sudden grunt. These are signs, warnings that something might be wrong. The corral itself isn't some industrial concrete trap. It's carefully designed to work with the bison's natural behavior. Wide entryways, curved paths, and non-slip flooring all help reduce stress and injury. The goal is to create a seamless flow, not a bottleneck. Bison, by nature, follow the leader. So once a few step forward, the others will follow, if the conditions are right. But things can go south in an instant. If one animal panics, the whole herd can react. That's why timing is so crucial. The roundup is often done during the cooler hours, early morning or late afternoon, when the animals are calm, well-fed, and less likely to overheat or spook. Even weather is considered. High winds, sudden rain, or extreme heat can derail the entire process. Once inside the corral, the real precision begins. Every animal must be individually guided into holding pens, not forced but lured. Some operations use gentle guiding walls. Others use one-way gates that keep the herd moving in a single direction. No shouting, no cattle prods, just patience, pressure, and purpose. At this stage, a trained team monitors the group closely. Each bison is visually inspected for signs of stress, injury, or illness. It's the first stage in a process that will determine whether an animal is ready for transport, veterinary attention, or simply another day in the field. And through it all, there's a strange beauty. Despite the steel gates and modern tools, the core of this operation feels ancient, a living echo of how people once worked alongside the great herds, not as masters, but as partners. The roundup ends not with chaos, but with quiet. The bison, calm and orderly, now wait in the holding area. They've been guided, not conquered, managed, not broken. And in that moment, the modern world feels just a little closer to its roots. But wrangling the herd is just one part of the story. Because while they may now be safely corralled, each bison still needs to be monitored, treated, and tracked with near-surgical precision. Health, after all, is everything, not just for the animals, but for the people who will one day consume them. Bison may look like tanks on hooves, but even these Ice Age survivors face invisible enemies: parasites, infections, and stress. That's why bison health management is one of the most advanced parts of modern farming. Every animal is tracked with ear tags or RFID chips, logging birth dates, weights, breeding history, and vaccine schedules. This data acts like a digital safety net, alerting farmers to early warning signs long before trouble spirals. But data isn't enough. Every few months, veterinary teams run full checkups: eyes, coat, breathing, hooves, blood tests, and vaccines for diseases like brucellosis or anthrax. Parasites are a growing threat too, especially in humid regions. Farmers fight back with rotational grazing and strategic deworming, letting the land heal while keeping herds strong. Unlike factory farms, bison operations don't rely on mass culling. Sick animals are isolated, treated, and reintroduced once healthy. Stress management is critical too, because high cortisol can weaken immunity and even ruin meat quality. That's why handlers move quietly, avoid sudden noises, and even wear muted clothing to keep the herd calm. Some farms now use GPS collars that monitor movement, feeding, and rest, giving farmers remote insight without disturbing the animals. And because bison enter the food chain, every vaccine, treatment, and inspection is meticulously documented to meet strict safety standards. The result? Animals that look wild live free, but carry full digital health records, healthy, traceable, and ready for the next stage. When it's time for processing, calm handling remains the rule. Bison are guided into low-stress trailers at dawn, with no shouting or prodding. At small-scale facilities, each animal is inspected again before slaughter, ensuring both humane treatment and food safety. The process is deliberate. A quick, approved method renders the bison unconscious, followed by skilled butchery. Nothing is wasted, bones become stock, hides are tanned, and organs find uses in food or pet products. The prized cuts, like loin or brisket, are trimmed for smoking. Curing comes next. Cuts are submerged in brine blends of salt, sugar, and spices, sometimes infused with garlic, pepper, or even molasses. After hours or days of curing, the meat is shaped, hung, and smoked slowly over hardwoods like hickory or cherry. Temperature, humidity, and smoke levels are tightly controlled. Done right, the slabs emerge glossy and mahogany-colored, infused with deep, sweet, smoky flavor. Finally, the meat is cooled, sliced thin, and vacuum-sealed with traceable labels. Whether sold in restaurants or gourmet shops, every package carries the story of a carefully raised and respectfully processed animal. Smoked bison isn't just another delicacy, it's a symbol of resilience. Once nearly hunted to extinction, bison have rebounded thanks to conservationists, indigenous communities, and ranchers. Today, they're not only food but also an ecological force, restoring prairie ecosystems through natural grazing patterns. For indigenous peoples, bison are sacred, tied to culture and survival. Their revival represents both ecological healing and cultural justice. For health-conscious eaters, bison meat offers lean protein, rich iron, and omega-3s, without the baggage of industrial farming. But bison aren't cattle. They resist confinement, grow on their own timeline, and demand wide pastures. That's why the meat is rarer, pricier, and more meaningful. Every bite connects us to history: thundering herds, ancient prairies, and survival against all odds. The industry now faces a balancing act: grow demand without industrializing, expand without erasing the wild spirit that defines the bison. Done right, this meat becomes more than food. It becomes a model for sustainable agriculture. Because bison aren't just animals. They're survivors. They're memory on the plate. And every slice of smoked bison is a reminder that food can still carry meaning. More than meat, the spirit of the bison. From wild prairies to modern farms, from ancient tradition to advanced science, the journey of the bison is unlike any other. These animals aren't just raised for meat. They're raised as symbols of survival, resilience, and balance with the land. Smoked bison isn't just food. It's history you can taste, a connection to cultures that revered the animal, and a reminder that farming can be done with respect, not exploitation. But here's the real takeaway. As demand for sustainable food grows, bison offer a blueprint. They restore ecosystems, provide clean protein, and challenge us to rethink how animals and humans share the land. The bison's story isn't just about the past, it's about the future of food itself. So now I'll throw it to you. Would you try smoked bison if it meant tasting a piece of history? Or do you think bison should remain wild and untouched? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden world of bison, hit that like button, subscribe to FactoryX for more behind-the-scenes food stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Because the next story we tell might just change the way you see your next meal.